Have you ever heard the guru stand up on stage and say, "Oh, just get the deal under contract. The money will show up"?
Yeah, I've heard a few say that, similar to that.
That's the most stupid thing in the world I ever heard.
It
I
is.
mean,
Yeah.
how's the money going to show up? Is it going to like rain out of clouds? Or sometimes they'll say, "Oh, get the deal under contract. Money finds good deals." Has money got legs? Has money going to come knocking on your door saying, "Hey, here, I'm some money. Have you got a deal?" That is stupid. It just makes sense to me. Get the money lined up first and think about how much more confident and how many more offers you're going to make as a real estate investor if you know exactly where the money is coming from to begin with.
If you're a real estate investor and are wondering how to raise and leverage private money to make more profit on every deal, then you're in the right place. On Raising Private Money, we'll speak with new and seasoned investors to dissect their deals and extract the best tips and strategies to help you get the money, because the money comes first. Now here's your host, Jay Conner.
We are born free, and we will die free. The time in between, though, that's complicated. In that time, governments, institutions, and our egos will limit our ability to find true freedom in this life. These are real stories of real people overcoming the odds, persevering in justice, and unlocking their potential. Welcome to Finding Freedom. Here's your host, John Oderman.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Finding Freedom right here on the Lions of Liberty Podcast Network. Have an awesome guest for you guys today. We're going to be talking about real estate, funding your real estate deals. So for those entrepreneurs out there, either maybe you're already working in real estate, or maybe you have some dreams. Maybe you got some aspirations to tap into the real estate market and invest. Definitely hang on. You don't want to miss this one. But before I do that, I just want to remind you guys about my friend Stephen Fox and Fox & Sons Coffee. It's my favorite coffee. I start every morning with it. My wife just asked me to make some cold brew. I go back and forth between the cold and the hot, but this time of year, the cold brew is definitely refreshing. He's got several different beans that I love. I love his espresso bean. I'm having an Ethiopian being right now that is good either hot or cold, so check those out. You can shop all of those different beans by going to Fox & Sons. That's Fox, the letter N, sons.com, and you can get 15% off an order of $40 or more by using promo code JOHN, JOHN, at checkout. So please go ahead and support a good entrepreneur and a good friend of mine, Stephen Fox. All right, guys, let's get into today's show. And my guest today is Jay Conner. And Jay is a longtime real estate investor. He's an author. He is known as the Private Money Authority. He's on a mission to help investors raise capital without relying on banks. And if you've ever thought that the only way to get into real estate is with your own money or with a bank loan, think again. You're going to learn about that today. So, Jay, welcome to Finding Freedom.
John, thank you so much for inviting me along to join you here on your show and talk about my favorite topic, which is private money for real estate deals. And the reason I'm so excited and so passionate about the topic of private money is that private money's had more of an impact on our real estate investing business than any other strategy that we've employed since I started using private money to fund my deals. All the way back in 2009 is when I started using private money. You know what, John? I've never missed out on a deal for not having the funding.
Well, that's something I like to hear. As someone getting into the real estate game, especially in these interesting times, I guess we'll call it that, with very high interest rates, hard to get bank loans in many different circumstances. Before we dig into some more details around private money, Just curious, so my audience could get some framework and learn a little bit more about you. If you could just share, what drew you into the real estate market? What brought you here?
Well, into the real estate investing world at large actually goes back to my childhood and what I grew up around. So my father, Wallace Connor, who's almost 92 years old, at one time, he was the largest retailer in the nation of mobile homes, manufactured housing. So I grew up around my dad and his company, helping families purchase a mobile home or manufactured home. So that was affordable housing. Well, unfortunately, the industry for mobile homes and manufactured housing, the financing for the consumer fell out of favor with Wall Street back in the early 2000s. So no financing for that product, you really can't sell a product. So I knew if I ever got out of mobile homes and manufactured housing, I wanted to get into single family houses. And here's why. All the way back to 1993, which was 10 years before my wife, Carol Joy, and I started in this industry of investing in single family houses. 10 years prior to that, in 1993, good friends of ours, Craig and Kim, they lived in New Bern, North Carolina, and they wanted to build their own house, but they didn't have their money to do it. Well, Kim's father was a real estate investor down in Florida, and he said, I'll come up to New Bern, North Carolina. I'll find you a fixer-upper. You all can do the sweat equity, and then we'll sell it, and you can keep the profit to start building your house. Well, in less than 90 days, they pocketed $30,000 in less than 90 days back in 1993. And I said, you know what? I know what I want to do if I ever get out of mobile homes, right? Well, the opportunity came along in 2003. So in 2003, that's when we started investing in single family houses right here in Eastern North Carolina, if you haven't picked up on that accent yet. And so ever since 2003, Carol Joy and I, we've been investing in single family houses. We've bought and sold, and we've flipped and rehabbed over 500 houses so far. We're in a small market, only 40,000 people, but we'll do 2 to 3 transactions a month. Our average profits are $86,000 per deal now. And I don't share that to brag at all. I share it to make a point. And that is, there's an argument to be made to be a big fish in a small pond instead of competing in the large cities where you've got all those other real estate investors.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And those prices, your money goes a lot longer in those smaller, more rural markets for sure, from what I've seen. So we talked about your intro into real estate, what got you, interested there in single family. What was your aha moment when you realized, really the power that you could unlock generating wealth through using private money?
Oh boy, John, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was sitting right here at this desk, and it was in January of 2009. So I started investing in single family houses in 2003. Mm-hmm. And then in January 2009, 6 years later, everything changed. What I'm getting ready to share right now, John, changed the total trajectory of our business. I was sitting here at this desk. I had 2 houses under contract to purchase, and I thought I still had a line of credit at the bank. Mm-hmm. And so I called him my banker. His name was Steve. And I told him about these 2 houses that I had under contract to purchase. Now, this was back in the day, John, when I was using unsecured lines of credit. And so anyway, I told him about these 2 deals. And he said, Jay, we're not loaning money out to real estate investors anymore. I said, Steve, what in the world are you talking about? We've had a great business relationship for 6 years. You funded a ton of my deals. The bank's made a bunch of money off of me. We've had a great relationship. Why is the bank closing my line of credit? And Steve said, Jay, don't you know there's a global financial crisis going on right now? I said, no, but you just gave me a global financial crisis. I said, I don't have a way to fund these two deals. He said, sorry, Jay, the bank's not loaning out money to real estate investors. So I hung up the phone, John, and I sat here at my desk for a moment, and I thought to myself, and I want to share with you and your audience, John, a very powerful question that I asked myself right after being cut off from the bank with my conversation with Steve, the banker. And here's the question I asked myself. And by the way, this question will help fix any problem anybody's got going on. I don't care if it's relationships, career, financial, health, it doesn't matter. Whatever the problem is, this question will help fix the problem. And you know what, John? I can't stand these people running around saying, oh, every problem's an opportunity. I want to throw up. I didn't have an opportunity. I had a problem. Let's face facts, right? Mm-hmm. Now, that problem did become an opportunity because you and I wouldn't be having a visit today without that problem. But at the time, it was a problem. So here's the question I asked myself. I said, Jay, who, it's not how. I said, who do you know that can help fix your problem? And you know, it's funny, John, when I asked myself that question, I immediately thought of my good friend, Jeff Blankenship. He was living in Greensboro, North Carolina in January of 2009, and he was investing in single family houses. I said, well, maybe my buddy Jeff will help me out. So I called up Jeff. I told him what had just happened with me getting cut off from the bank. Jeff said, well, Jay, welcome to the club. I said, well, I'm not sure I want to be a member of that club, but what club are you talking about? He said, well, that's the club of having the bank shut your line of credit down. He said, my bank shut me down last week. I said, well, Jeff, how are you going to fund your real estate deals? He said, well, have you ever heard of private money? I said, no. He said, have you ever heard of self-directed IRAs and how individuals can take existing retirement accounts and move them over to a self-directed IRA company, and then they can loan that money out to us real estate investors, and the interest we pay them is either tax-free or tax-deferred. I said, Jeff, I don't have a clue what you're talking about. I said, what is private money? He said, well, there's this gentleman down in Jacksonville, Florida, by the name of Ron LeGrand. I said, well, who's Ron LeGrand? He said, well, I don't really know, but he says he can teach us about private money. I said, well, what is it? He says, I don't know, but Ron LeGrand says we can get a lot of it really, really fast. I said, okay. So I went to my very first real estate investing seminar in February of 2009 to learn about private money. And John, oh boy, did I learn about private money. I came back home here to Morehead City, and I was able to raise $2,150,000 in private money, private funding that I did not have prior to being cut off from the bank. So how in the world did I do that? Here's the answer. The first thing I decided, John, is I'm not going to ask anybody for money. And the second thing I decided was I'm not going to pitch any deals. You know, it's funny. To this date, since 2009, when I started using private money, I've never asked anybody for money, and I've never pitched a deal. And people ask me all the time, they say, Jay, how in the world do you have $8.5 million in private money that you just use from project to project, house to house? And how do you get it without ever pitching a deal?
It's a good question. Yeah.
I was going to say, John, if you want the answer to that question, I'll keep plowing forward.
keep on going. Keep on going, Jay.
So first of all, how to get money without asking for it. So here's what I decided. You see, the traditional way, don't miss this. This is critical. The traditional way to borrow money from anybody, an institution, whatever, is to have the belief that whoever's got the money makes the rules. The traditional thinking is whoever's lending the money sets the interest rate. Mm-hmm. The traditional thinking is whoever's lending the money is the underwriter and decides on the terms as to how that money is going to be loaned out. That's all traditional thinking. I decided I was going to turn that thinking upside down on its ear. So what did I do? I took on the attitude of having a servant's heart, and I took on the attitude of being a teacher. So I got my teacher hat here, and my teacher hat says private money teacher. Private money teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So let me unpack what that means. First, I had to decide what was I going to teach and who was I going to teach it to. So I decided I was going to start sharing, first of all, with my own network, my own connections, my own warm market, as to what private money is and how they could be a private lender and how they could earn high rates of return safely and securely, either using their investment capital or their retirement accounts. So in order to do that, I had to decide, well, what in the world am I going to teach? What am I going to teach? So I decided I was going to put the private money opportunity together, the private money program, if you will. So I decided what interest rate I was going to pay my private lenders. 8%. I've been paying them 8% with no points, no origination fees ever since February of 2009. So I'm going to pay them 8%. I decided what I could put in place to protect them. So I decided I was not going to borrow unsecured money. I was going to give them a deed of trust. Here in North Carolina, most people call it a mortgage, and collateralize their notes. I decided I was going to name them on the insurance policy as a mortgagee to give them another layer of protection. I decided I was going to name them on the title policy as an additional insured. So I put the framework together. And so then I started sharing the opportunity. Now, I need to make this very, very huge, big, important point. And that is the big mistake that real estate investors make, particularly new real estate investors looking to raise capital or seasoned real estate investors, is they pitch deals. I've never pitched a deal in my life. So how do I not pitch a deal? Well, here's the answer to that. I separate the conversations between teaching the opportunity to someone that's never been exposed to this world of private money. Here's what's interesting, John. I got 47 private lenders today. Not one of them had ever heard of private money or private lending until I put on my teacher hat and I exposed them to what this world is all about. So I'm going to separate the conversations of teaching the opportunity and then having a deal for them to fund. Now, John, I'm going to take a little bit of risk right here, and I'm going to step out on a limb. I'm going to ask you a question. Here's the question. Have you ever heard the guru stand up on stage and say, oh, just get the deal under contract. The money will show up?
Yeah, I've heard a few say that. Similar to that.
That's the most stupid thing in the world I ever heard.
It is.
I mean, how's the money going to show up? Is it going to like rain out of clouds? Or sometimes they'll say, oh, get the deal under contract. Money finds good deals. Has money got legs? Has money going to come knocking on your door saying, hey, here, I'm some money. Have you got a deal? That is stupid. It just makes sense to me. Get the money lined up first and think about how much more confident and how many more offers you're going to make as a real estate investor if you know exactly where the money is coming from to begin with. So separate conversations of teaching the opportunity and then having a deal for them to fund. So the best way I can illustrate this, John, on how I get deals funded without ever pitching a deal is to share with you and your audience the exact script as to what I say to my private lender when I've got a deal for them to fund, and they always fund the deal 100% of the time without me pitching a deal. So here it is. Now, let me do a little setup. Let me do 3 hypothetical scenarios here between you and me, and this is going to make sense. So let's pretend, first of all, John, let's pretend you and I go to church, right? Let's say you and I have known each other for some time. We go to church, we're friends, we see each other 2 or 3 times a week at church. We know each other, no question about that. The second thing let's assume that I have put on my teacher hat and you and I have gone and gotten coffee at Starbucks or whatever. And I've told you about this world of private money. And I've asked you if you've ever heard of self-directed IRAs, and you told me no. I learned in the conversation that you worked for a previous employer and that you still have $150,000 401k with that previous employer, and it's in the stock market, and you don't like it. It's volatile and it's all over the place, and you don't like it. And let's also assume that I have introduced you to a self-directed IRA company that I recommend. And let's also assume you have moved that $150,000 over to the self-directed IRA company. And now you got your account funded. And I have told you I'm going to put your money to work for you just as soon as possible. So now that's the setup. Now I'm going to call you with what I call the good news phone call. So here's the script of the good news phone call. I call you up, you answer, we have a little chit chat. And then here's exactly, John, what I would say to you as one of my private lenders. I'd say, John, I've got great news for you. I can now put your money to work. I've got a house under contract in Newport, North Carolina with an after repaired value of $200,000. Now, the funding required for this deal matches up to what you have in your self-directed IRA company. $150,000 is the funding that's required. Now, closing is scheduled for next Tuesday. So I'll need for you to have your funds wired to my real estate attorney's trust account by next Monday. I'm going to have my real estate attorney email you the wiring instructions. That's the end of the conversation. The most stupid thing I could do is ask John, do you want to fund the deal? Of course he wants to fund the deal. And John wants.
And you also didn't go into detail about the deal. You didn't say, what needed to be. I'm assuming this would be a flip in this. That's right. Scenario. Yep. You didn't explain what needed to be done. If the kitchen needs to be done, it costs this much, and the bathroom this much, and a new roof. You didn't get any of that.
No. And you know why I didn't? Because you don't care. You don't care, right? Yeah. And so there's three big reasons in that example why John is ecstatic to fund my deal. Let's unpack the three reasons. Number one, John is excited to fund my deal because, first of all, he trusted me to move his money over to the self-directed IRA. He'd never heard about private lending. He'd never heard about self-directed IRAs. He knew he wasn't happy where it was. He likes this program. He likes the 8% I'm going to pay him. And so he likes the program. He liked the program, and he moved his money over to the self-directed IRA at my recommendation. That's number one. He trusted me. The second reason John is ecstatic to fund my deal is John knows I'm not going to bring a deal for him to fund unless it matches the underwriting criteria that I already taught him. Did you hear the numbers? I told John in the good news phone call, the after repaired value is $200,000. I also told him the funding required is $150,000. Well, that is 75% of the after repaired value. I didn't say 75% of purchase price. I'm going to bring home a big check called excess cash to close when I buy this property. I'm going to buy it for $100,000. I'm bringing home a $50,000 check that I'm going to use primarily for the renovation. So second reason John wants to fund my deal is because it matches the criteria of the program that I already taught him. And the third big reason John wants to fund my deal is because he's not making any money until I put his money to work. So I am ethically obligated to invest John's money that he's already moved over.
Yeah, makes sense. So let me ask you this. You've gone through how you've done this, right? Through putting the teacher hat on, teaching people about self-directed IRAs, underwriting the deal, what they can expect, how to make that phone call. how do you recommend people who are brand new and want to do this? How do they get started? Is this something that takes a long time to learn about this in order to ramp up to be able to teach it and then build up your own network of private money investors?
That's a great question. I have many, many members of my community that have come into my world to learn all the details about this. And it's so realistic to get $500,000 or more within 30 days. And this is for people that have been real estate investors. This is for people that are brand new and haven't even done their first deal yet. And, that reminds me, John, one question, and it's a very valid question. One question that new real estate investors ask is, who in the world's going to loan me money on a real estate deal? And I've never done a deal before in my life.
Yeah,
who in the world is going to, who in their right mind is going to do that? And there's two reasons why a new real estate investor can get a lot of private money very, very quickly. And here's the two reasons. Number one, if the real estate investor does not pay the private lender, the property does pay the private lender. In other words, if the private lender doesn't pay them, the lender gets the property. That's their security. Now, they don't want the property. They don't want to mess with the property.
Right.
That's why they are a passive real estate investor. That's why they are a lender, but that's their security. So they're going to loan the money out because it's not unsecured money that's being loaned, but it's secured money. Now, the second reason a private lender is going to loan money to that real estate investor is because that real estate investor better not be out there doing business on their own without working with somebody that's experienced and knows what they're doing. Mm-hmm. So, for example, new real estate investors that come into my community, which is about a third of my community that come into my world for me to work with them, about a third of them have never done a real estate deal before. So guess what? I'm their business partner that has flipped over 500 houses and got over $8.5 million in private money and got 47 private lenders. So for sure, a brand new real estate investor should not be doing this business unless they have joined forces and they're working with somebody that already knows the ropes.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Let me ask you this, kind of, I guess, zooming back in to the market right now, just to get your take on if somebody were looking to get started today. I know you mentioned earlier, not going into big cities, but is there anything else when it comes to selecting a market in order to implement this private money strategy that people should be looking for in this, uncertain market where rates are high? There's a big supply of homes, but a lot of these sellers, it doesn't seem like they've got the memo that they should be dropping their prices.
Right. Well, that's a great question. So let me answer it this way. First of all, private money works in your market anywhere. And by the way, private money is not just for single family houses. Mm-hmm. Private money can be for any kind of real estate. Private money can be for land. It can be for self-storage. It can be for apartments. It can be for mobile home parks. It can be for mobile homes. I mean, any kind of real estate. It just comes down to how do you structure the deal. But one thing that I would advise on where or what types of deals you should be investing in, for goodness sakes, in this market, focus on first-time home buyer price points of single family houses. Focus on first-time home buyer price points. Why is that? Because that's where the biggest pool of buyers of houses are. Mm-hmm. Is first-time home buyers that have never bought before. And in addition, as I mentioned a moment ago, private money is just not for purchasing single-family houses. Private money can be for refinancing. So if you've got equity in real estate and you want to pull some of that cash out for whatever reason, operating capital or what have you, you can use private money for refinancing as well.
And you talk about refinancing. I mean, with private money, you're generally talking about a shorter term, right? So what terms are you looking at and maybe I'm kind of going all over the place with this question, but you can kind of take it where you need to. But when you talk about, bringing someone in, self-directed IRA, they invest $150,000. Is this something where they're getting their return and getting their money back within 3 years, 5 years, or what is it?
Right. I'm glad you asked that question, John, because that gives me the opportunity to talk a second about the difference between private money and hard money. So
Sure.
when we're talking private money, I'm not talking about hard money.
Mhm.
Hard money is typically a brokerage. Hard money is typically institutional money where the hard money lender has gone out, raised capital for their hard money lending fund, and then the hard money broker turns around and lends that money out at a higher interest rate, charges points and origination fees and that kind of thing. In this world of private money, we're talking about doing business with the just ordinary people, individuals, just like, you or me. But
Right.
since I started talking about hard money and private money, I already forgot your question. What did you just ask?
It was asking in general.
Oh, the length of the note. Thank you.
Yeah, length of the note. Yeah.
Length of the note. So the reason that triggered me to talk about hard money is because most hard money lenders, the length of the note is only going to be 6 months or 9 months
Right.
for a flip, maybe 12 months if you've got a track record with that hard money lender. But in this world of private money, there's no hurry to pay the money back. Here's why. And in fact, my notes are 2 years or 5 years. If a private lender is loaning me money from their investment capital, then I'll set the note up for 5 years, even though I'm typically not going to use it that long. I sell a lot of homes on rent to own or lease purchase, and that gives people time to get ready for a mortgage, and then we cash out.
Mhm.
If they're just using investment capital, then I'll set the length of the note up for 2 years, particularly if I'm just doing a flip, and I'm not going to use it for 2 years either. But the reason there's no hurry to pay back private money, because I've been paying my private lenders the same interest rate ever since February 2009. Well, guess what? The bank right down the street from my office here in Morehead City, North Carolina, is charging more than 8% for commercial rates on real estate, on single family houses.
Wow.
So you're actually at 8% on private money with no points, no origination fees, no extension fees.
Mhm.
You're saving so much money just paying a straight 8% to the private lenders.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Jay, unfortunately, we are out of time here pretty much for
I know,
the day.
and we just got started. I
Yeah.
got so much I want to tell.
I feel like we did. But before I let you go, so people can follow you and, if they want to go learn more about you, where can they do that? Give me your plugs.
Sure. Well, John, first of all, I would love to give a very valuable gift, in fact, 2 gifts to your audience. And
Awesome.
that is my new book, which is called Where to Get the Money Now, subtitle, How and Where to Get Money for Your Real Estate Deals Without Relying on Hard Money Lenders. This is not an ebook. This is a real book. And it's $20 at Amazon, but don't spend $20 at Amazon. I'd love to give you the book for free. I'll autograph it. I'll express mail it to you in the United States Postal Service. Just cover shipping and handling. You can pick up the book, Where to Get the Money Now, at jayconner.com/book. Again, that's jayconner.com/book. I'll rush it right out to you. I'm also going to include 2 tickets to my live event, which is called the Private Money Conference. And I do that event 3 times a year. Those tickets are valued at $3,000. I'm going to include 2 tickets along with the book. I'll rush that right out to you, jayconner.com/book. In addition to that, if you've enjoyed the information about private money here on this show, then come over and check out my podcast. And my podcast, we're in our 8th year of podcasting. And the name of my show is Raising Private Money. Imagine that. Raising Private Money with Jay Conner. I'm on all the podcast platforms, and twice a week, I release them early Monday morning and Thursday mornings. Twice a week, I'm interviewing other real estate investors, interviewing them as to how they have gone out and been successful raising private money.
That's awesome, Jay. I want to thank you for coming on the show, being so generous with your time and, generous with my audience with that gift for today. So I appreciate that. I will link to where everyone can get that book on the show notes page, and I'll link to your podcast as well. So Jay, thanks for coming on the show.
John, thank you so much for having me. God bless you.
All right, guys, that is a wrap for today's show with Jay Conner. I want to thank Jay once again for joining us today. Hopefully everyone learned something, maybe piqued a little bit of curiosity. And if you are curious, if you are looking to learn more, please do check out the show notes page with those links I talked about before. You can find those, of course, at lionsofliberty.com. One note before I let you all go for today. Of course, here at Lions of Liberty, we have a new podcast every other Friday on our network called Politics. That's politics spelled with tick, like the blood-sucking insect, because that's what most politicians are. So you can check that show out every other Friday with myself, with Brian McWilliams, Brian Nichols, and Lou Perez. It's been getting great reviews, so please check it out, subscribe to the feed, and that's all I got for this week. I'll see y'all next week with another awesome guest. Next week is my 500th episode, so definitely tune in for that. But in the meantime, always remember to keep your head up and those fires of liberty burning.
Are you feeling inspired by the knowledge you gained in this episode? Then head over to jconner.com/moneyguide. That's jconner.com/moneyguide and download your free guide that shares 7 reasons why private money will skyrocket your real estate investing business right now. Again, that's jconner.com/moneyguide to get your free guide. We'll see you next time on Raising Private Money with Jay Conner.